Welcome to this ServiceNow Community Ask the Expert section. My name is Dan Grady. I'm going to be your host today for some performance analytics capabilities you may have missed. Before we get started, though, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. This live broadcast that you're watching here, this is going to become an on-demand video immediately. So I know you're going to be so excited about what you hear. You're going to want to run out and tell your friends. You're going to be able to kind of share that link with them and get them going. And then whether you're watching it live now or you're one of those friends that got this fantastic recording and a link, please feel free to join the ServiceNow community and start posting your questions, your comments, and your feedback there. And we're going to do our best to address those in the most timely manner. But that's the best place to post your questions to get them answered by myself, my peers, and others, and your peers in the ServiceNow community. And then once we're done here, there's going to be a survey link on the community. We want your feedback. We want to get better. We want to know what other topics you want to hear about in sessions just like this. So those are the housekeeping notes. You may have seen some of the promotion around this. We're calling this a performance analytics date night. And I have to imagine most of you are familiar with the concept of a date night. My wife and I, we have 3 children. And once a month we get a babysitter and we like to go out and just spend some time reminding each other why we fell in love in the first place and talking about, things that have happened throughout the week or throughout the month that we may have not got the chance to speak about because we've been so bogged down with operational things like going to the grocery store and going to work and taking the kids to soccer and basketball practices. And that same kind of thing happens at work, right? Where you've got this great technology and solution that you've been using. But then, at ServiceNow, we put out a release pretty much every 6 months. And there's a whole bunch of new capabilities that come with that. But because of the operational day-to-day activities that you're dealing with, I'm pretty sure the majority of us don't get the chance to sit down and read the new feature document from cover to cover. So what we're going to do here is we're kind of going to spend some time reminding you why you fell in love with performance analytics in the first place. And then in addition to that, we'll start to talk about some of the capabilities that I find that most customers overlook because they've just been bogged down handling day-to-day things. So we'll start off with an appetizer of the why and what of performance analytics. And then we'll move on to the main course of the session, which is we'll look at things like the Workbench, Spotlight, interactive analysis, and then something special that the chef has put on the menu for you that we'll get to towards the end. Like I said, after dinner, please post your questions in the community. We're not going to be able to answer much of them here on the call itself, but put them in the community and we'll get to them. And then lastly, the dessert for all of us will be the continued conversation and collaboration on the community. Now, for those of you that are not overly familiar with performance analytics, let's just talk a little bit about what it is and why it's important to you. You've invested in the ServiceNow platform and you're using the ServiceNow platform to make some sort of transformation inside of your organization. And as that transformation takes place, a tremendous amount of data is being generated on the platform. And that's valuable. It's a valuable asset that we can use to help improve decision-making and increase business performance. But one of the struggles or challenges that many people face is as they start to get better, they really only track the metrics around us getting better. How many of you on the phone here or on this webinar have been asked to produce an executive level dashboard, which is an important piece to tell those executive level stakeholders about the changes that we're making, right? About the progress that we're making to the goals that we're trying to achieve in relation to our business outcomes. But if we simply just looked at those outcome-based metrics, the results, doesn't really help us get better. It just tells us what's happened. In order to move those numbers on those executive dashboards, we need to kind of start changing the processes and influencing the decisions that the service owners make and driving the behaviors of the folks on the front lines. And the examples and the capabilities that we're going to be looking at today are not for those executive level dashboards. They're going to be more for those people on the front lines, the service owners and the frontline workers inside of the organization. And because so many people struggle in that area of kind of getting information, one of the reasons people struggle in that area of getting information out to everyone inside of the organization and typically focus on the executive level dashboards is because those frontline workers and the service workers, they don't typically leave the system of action or record to go get analytics. And it's one of the reasons you're seeing a trend inside of the organization around embedded analytics inside of the core platform, is because we really need to start influencing the behaviors of those operational frontline workers. The good news is performance analytics is that in-platform solution, right? It's right there in the system of action that people are using on a regular basis. And you can apply performance analytics to anything, any application that you have running on the platform, whether it be IT service management, customer service management, HR, security operations, applications that you build on your own that we don't provide you out of the box. So if you're using the Now platform to create an application, you can apply performance analytics to anything that is taking place on the platform. And because it is an in-platform solution, analytics solution, you get some inherent benefits. First and foremost is real-time access to information. Because it is an in-platform solution, as you start seeing trends and patterns inside of the data, you always have the ability in real time to drill down and take action on the records. If for some reason you decided to move data off the platform and use a third-party analytics solution, you would immediately be adding some layer of latency to that information, and it will become a little bit less actionable. Because it's an in-platform solution, you get some native content. ServiceNow provides you currently with the Kingston release over 544 out-of-the-box pre-configured key performance indicators and over 100 out-of-the-box pre-configured dashboards. This content is based on industry best practice and the wisdom of the crowds. We're consistently or continuously learning from you in the community, the types of things that are important to you to measure and track. And we bring that feedback back into the platform and provide you more out-of-the-box content to help jumpstart you on your analytics journey. And then the last benefit of being an in-platform solution is that we leverage all the existing security work that you've put in place. You've added a bunch of ACLs to the platform. Performance analytics is just going to inherit that security. And as people start drilling down into the information, they're only going to be able to see what they're allowed to see. These three things are inherent benefits that you get from using an in-platform analytics solution. In addition to that, performance analytics brings additional value to the data in the platform, or helps you get more value out of the data in the platform by adding context in three ways. The first is time. That operational reporting that the platform provides is fantastic for helping you ask and answer this question of where are we today? Where are we right now? But if I came to any of you and said, hey, did you know that you had 118 incidents open right now? Is that good or is that bad? You'd have no way to effectively answer that question without the context of time. Performance analytics brings that snapshotting engine to help you understand not only where you are today, but where we were before. And now that we have these two data points, we can get an understanding whether we're improving or not. And that's really what the platform is about. It's about helping us get better as an organization. And we need to start tracking and measuring ourselves in the area of getting better. In addition to that, the platform gives you, or performance analytics brings the ability to start setting goals and targets related to the key performance indicators that we're measuring over time. So we get the infrastructure to start setting goals and targets. We also bring a forecasting engine with performance analytics to help us understand that if everything stays the same, when will we reach those goals we've set for ourselves? You'll also start getting visibility into the levers that you can be pulling inside of the organization to help us get there quicker. All of those other questions above and beyond where we are right now, performance analytics brings the additional infrastructure necessary for asking and answering those questions. The best analogy I've ever heard to describe the difference between the operational reporting the platform brings and performance analytics is this. It said, the operational reporting is kind of like a scoreboard at a game. It tells you the home team is up 28-27. Tells you how much time is left, how many timeouts each team has. But what it doesn't tell you is this. It doesn't tell you that the home team was just up 28-0 and the visitors have scored 27 straight points. It doesn't tell you that the home team's best player just got hurt 2 minutes ago. It gives you no visibility into the momentum inside of the game. And you would hope that you're going to manage or coach that game differently based on the momentum inside of the game. The same is true with our businesses. Right? You're going to manage your business differently once you get insight into the momentum inside of the organization. And performance analytics brings you that visibility into the momentum. The next aspect of context that performance analytics brings is this context of influence. And all of the capabilities that I'm going to show you here today are designed to help us better understand different influencing factors. When we think about the context of influence, this is all about moving us away from a world in which we're tracking and measuring things in isolation. Anything that you track in isolation is always going to be known as a lagging indicator, right? It's output oriented. This is what happened, right? You're going to be reacting to that all of the time, right? It's a very reactive way of doing things. With performance analytics, we have the ability to start building and visualizing relationships between the things that we're tracking, and that allows us to create what are known as leading indicators, things that are more input-oriented, that sometimes they're harder to measure, but they're the things that we can influence to change the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. Right? And real easy example of a leading and lagging indicator combination is weight loss. Right? When I step on that scale, my weight on that scale, that is a lagging indicator in that situation. It doesn't really matter how much my watch weighs. When I step on that scale, even if I take off my watch, it doesn't really weigh as much as I ever think it's going to be. That number is what it is. I can't really change it at that point in time. But there's things that I can do and track and trend over time to help influence my weight loss, like my number of steps on a daily basis that I take and track with my Fitbit or whatever exercise tracker that I'm using, or my caloric intake on a daily basis. Those are all things that I can measure and track and trend that will influence my weight. So I should start tracking those. Those are good leading indicators. In our more IT-centric world, or just in our business world, a good example might be, let's say we want to resolve 95% of our P3 incidents in 48 hours. The solved incidents, right? Once they're solved and done after 48 hours, I can't really do much to influence them. Right? That's just a lagging indicator. But the percent of P3s not worked on in 24 hours, or percent of open P3 incidents older than a day, those are things that I can start tracking and improving intraday that potentially will influence that lagging indicator of my P3 incidents that were solved at 48 hours. Right? Think about the leading indicators in your organization, or things that you can track to influence outcomes. Now, that being said, it's all about context. What's leading indicator for one could be a lagging indicator for another. If I use my weight loss example again, in the situation where weight is a lagging indicator in many cases, but if my overall outcome was to improve the customer satisfaction of the other beachgoers when I get there, if that's what I'm trying to measure, the CSAT score of other beachgoers or my other fellow patrons on the beach, guess what? My weight is going to be a leading indicator to that, because that's going to influence how I look inside of my bathing suit and ultimately the satisfaction of those folks on the beach with me. Right, so what might be a lagging indicator in one situation could be a leading indicator in another situation. It's all about the context. And that context is typically driven by where you sit inside of the organization. And that leads us to our last aspect of context, the context of people. Performance analytics, what it is meant to do, it's meant to align all of the stakeholders inside of an organization to a given business outcome. The real trick there, though, is I can't give each of those individual stakeholders involved in the process the same lens into the data. Right? I can't take that executive level dashboard and provide it to the folks on the front lines and expect that it's going to influence their behavior in any way, shape, or form. And that's the real trick, because the numbers on those executive dashboards, they don't change just because I have executive dashboards. They only change when I start influencing the behaviors of the folks on the front lines and help them do their job in a more effective fashion. The numbers on that executive dashboard, they only change when the service owners, they start changing and improving the processes within the service that they're delivering. Right? It's those changes by the other stakeholders that have a more operational role that actually influence the numbers on the executive dashboards. So it's about getting everybody involved in the process. And what we're going to be looking at in the demonstration here is a bunch of capabilities that are designed for, let's say, the frontline worker or for a service or a process owner to help give them the visibility they need to understand the changes they should be making or change their behavior in one way, shape, or form. Right? So Most of us are familiar with an executive dashboard that looks much like this. I've got high-level outcomes that I'm trying to achieve, some momentum in the areas around those outcomes, and then some breakdowns at the bottom of the screen through influencing factors. This is a typical type of executive level dashboard. But when we start getting out to, let's say, a service or a process owner, there's a capability, actually a widget, that comes with performance analytics called a Workbench. And it's designed to help give us visibility into a process. But you can use the Workbench in a number of different ways to help communicate a large volume of information via a single pane of glass. I just want to bring up one Workbench widget here and walk you through how it works. Happens to be one of my more favorite ways to visualize information coming out of the ServiceNow platform. I'll show you a number of different examples, but the first example that we're going to be looking at here, this is a Workbench widget that's designed to help us get an understanding of our open incidents. Right? And that's the main indicator that we're looking at on the screen here, is the number of open incidents. That's the trend that we're focusing on. Across the top of this Workbench widget, what we've decided to do is break the incidents down by the tier in which they live. I've got 105 open incidents in Tier 1, 137 open in Tier 2, and 158 open in Tier 3. That's simply a way to group the information. I'm going to show you a number of other different examples of which we've organized the information differently, one by CIO, one by the state that the incident lives in, and one by different cost factors that are out there. It's simply a way to group information, these chevrons across the top. And then as I move down the screen, I get even more information about those 105 incidents open in Tier 1. I can see that their average age is 16 days. The first call resolution rate right now is 75%. 59% of those 105 haven't been updated in 5 days, and 14% haven't been updated in 30 days. Very powerful visualization for helping you to communicate a large volume of information via a single pane of glass. In the situation that we were focusing on here, we were looking at the number of open incidents, right, and focusing in on those, right now, those 105 in Tier 1, and different aspects or influencing factors of those 105 open incidents. Right, so at any point in time, if I saw a spike with my backlog, I would always be able to go back and see what was potentially contributing or influencing to that spike. And then as I move down the screen, I get access to even more information about those 105 open incidents. Because I am in the platform, I always have real-time access to those records, those incidents, as they exist right now, so I could drill down and take action on any one of them. And then I can start breaking them down in different ways. Using your standard performance analytics breakdowns, any way that I've organized my data, I can start looking at and slicing and dicing those open incidents in Tier 1. In this case here, let's come down here and I see that, you know what? In isolation, if I was just using a volume-based count metric like I have, let's say, an out-of-the-box report, we'd all be high-fiving because I have a relatively low number of critical incidents. But if I add in that context of time using this spark line here, guess what? That relatively low number of 6 happens to be an all-time high, and I can see that from the trend that is there. So the context of time is now giving me visibility into an opportunity I may have missed if I was just looking at a number in isolation. So a tremendous amount of information packaged up into a single screen. There's different ways that you can start visualizing this information. Let's say I wanted to look at a Pareto view of all of this. I could do that. So you've got some different visualization options here. But the other thing that I want to point out here is watch what happens when I switch over to Tier 3. Watch my influencing indicators down here. I switch over to Tier 3 and I can see, you know what? I no longer have first call resolution rate. It's switched over to average reassignment counts. And why is that? Well, when I move to Tier 3, the first call resolution rate is not really as important to me, but my reassignment count might be. And I can come in here and I can isolate just my reassignment counts and watch what happens to the volume-based metrics down here at the bottom. When I click on average reassignment count, it'll swap over and just show me that metric broken down in different ways. And I can see that people are playing hot potato with my critical and high tickets. They're bouncing back and forth. They're well above the average reassignment count. Or maybe I want to look at it broken down by category and get some direction in terms of where are some areas of opportunity from, let's say, a training perspective or a knowledge-based perspective. So like I said earlier, a lot of information packaged up into a single screen. I usually ask my customers, you know, if you were trying to communicate the same amount of information that I've got here in this one single workbench, how many different tabs do you think you would have across the bottom of your worksheet inside of Excel? And I usually get things like 5, 10, 15. Right? So it's a great way to communicate a lot of information. It's not going to be for everyone inside of the organization. It's going to be those folks that really want to start digging in and having a conversation with the data. Just to give you a sense of some other examples that are out there, one of the out-of-the-box ones that you're going to be getting with the platform is an open incident state monitor. Very good for any workflow-based or task-based exercise in the platform is to use the breakdowns across the top to focus in on certain states of that workflow. So let's say I only want to focus in this case, on incidents that are awaiting user info. I can do that here. All right, so state is a great breakdown across the top of the screen. Another example that I've got here is just an example of kind of one organization was looking to start tracking and measuring different aspects of cost. So in this case here, we've used the Workbench to isolate incident resolution cost. And then if I want to get a sense of the impact, the cost impact of outages, I come over to this view of the information, and then my cloud usage costs. So one single Workbench to help me communicate different aspects of costs in one screen for the end user or the targeted user there. And then the last example that I'll bring up here, this is an example that one organization, they had 5 global CIOs. Whoops. And on a monthly basis, they do what I like to call the finger pointing across the individual CIOs and their SLA attainment. Or if you're more of a glass half full person, finger pointing might not be the best word, but let's say the opportunities to improve meeting that's there. So it's a monthly performance council. And what we chose to do in that situation is across the top, we chose to break the Workbench down by the individual CIOs and look at their SLA attainment and different aspects of their SLA attainment in the Workbench. So Workbench, powerful visualization to give you a lot of information in a single pane of glass and help you understand those influencing factors. And once you get a better understanding of those different influencing factors, you know, or you have a better guide in terms of what levers you could be pulling inside of the organization to make the changes that you want or that will help you get better. Let me just come back here. So that's the Workbench. Now, if you want some more examples of Workbench, I'm going to post these underneath the recording. That's probably going to be a little bit choppy at this point, but I'll post those. I'll post these different blogs that I've got here, or we've got from an organizational perspective, a batch of different capabilities right underneath it. This one here, to maximize the value of your data, have a conversation with it. It's got several different examples of the Workbench widget in action. The next date night feature that we'll talk about is Spotlight. And Spotlight was available in Istanbul. And what Spotlight is technically is it's a declarative scoring mechanism to help you better prioritize things. All right, so what Spotlight allows us to do is take different aspects of a record, in this case, an incident task, right, an incident in the platform, and provide different weighting values to it. So we're not just prioritizing things based on a single factor. I'm going to show you how this one works in a live demonstration. It's called Performance Analytics Spotlight. And I've got it here on this Service Desk Worker dashboard. Now, typically, the further you get more value out of the data, the further you can push it out inside of an organization. Right? The further you can extend the reach of your data, the more value it's going to have. And when we get to the front lines inside of the organization, it becomes less likely that you're ever going to get them to leave their operational system of action to go over to another system or a third-party tool to look at data. So in order to keep them aligned to the outcomes that we're trying to achieve, right, in order to change their behavior, influence behavior, we need to start kind of pushing analytics or embedding analytics right in the flow of those frontline workers' day-to-day lives. And that's kind of what we've done on this screen here. All right, in the middle of the screen here, we have a queue of open incidents, and we've prioritized them by this score, which is Spotlight. And I'm going to come back to that in a second. We've also given them visibility into the number of critical incidents and the number of open incidents on this screen. In addition to that, we've also given them visibility into the trends related to the key performance indicators that they're potentially being measured against. So things like mean time to resolve, average age, and their backlog. So that frontline worker, they now get a sense of the work that they're doing. How is it influencing the overall goals that we're trying to achieve? And that's a big part of driving people's behaviors, simply just communicating to them where they stand in relation to the goals that the organization has. In addition to that on this screen, and this is not something that we see every organization going forward with, but more and more companies or organizations are asking about the concept of peer-to-peer analysis. So what they're doing is they're creating some sort of normalized efficiency metric in many cases, and they're starting to expose where individual teams stand in relation to that metric. And a funny thing happens when you start making information about people publicly available. It tends to drive or motivate behaviors inside of the organization, and that's what we've done here. Now, Spotlight. Like I mentioned earlier, Spotlight is a way to take multiple factors of, in this case, an incident and weight them differently to create a more holistic score for it. So let's just say if I was only using priority in this case to determine what to focus on, I've now got 12 critical incidents out there. And the frontline worker, what they're doing is they're trying to analyze those 12 incidents and which one they should be working on rather than doing what I want them to be doing, which is actually working the incident. With Spotlight, I can take a lot of different factors, including priority, into account and create this holistic score. So this incident got moved to the top of the list because of these 9 contributing factors. It got 1,000 points because it hadn't been updated in 30 days, another 1,000 because it has user impact, another 100 because it's been reassigned more than 3 times, and another 100 because it hadn't been updated in 5 days. And another 100 because it was a P2. So all of these things contributed to that overall Spotlight score. And this right here, what you're looking at, this is called a Spotlight group. Right? So you have the ability inside of the platform to set up different Spotlight groups and assign them to a set of data. Right? In this case, we focus this on this Spotlight group on the number of open incidents. And then we apply these different scoring factors to it and come up with that holistic score for each of the individual incidents that's there. It's a way to prioritize work. You can apply it to any data on the platform or any record on the platform, Spotlight. You just come up with different Spotlight groups. And just so you can see here on your left-hand nav bar, if you type in Spotlight plugin turned on, it's a different application. And in my case here, I've got 7 different Spotlight groups set up. So my incident Spotlight group, this is focused on my number of open incidents. That's the main indicator that's right here. I want to make it active. And then I set up all these different criteria and the weightings for that individual Spotlight group. And then I apply or run the Spotlight job to the number of open incidents that I've captured, and it does all the weighting and creates Spotlight records. And what you'll technically do after this is you've got this separate table of the scored values. There's an out-of-the-box view or database view on the platform for incident tied to the Spotlight table. And then you can start building reports off of this data. You can start visualizing this data in different ways. You're just using the view and the prioritized score that Spotlight provides for you. So it's called Spotlight. It's a Spotlight group. As I mentioned earlier, it came out in Istanbul, and it's a very powerful capability that a lot of customers don't know exists just yet. And it can be applied in a number of different ways. There's a great blog that's out there written by my colleague Tom Pasek that walks through a number of different Spotlight use cases. If you're interested in some brainstorming around some other ideas, check out that blog that's out there. And just like as I mentioned earlier, the Spotlight functionality is not available until you activate the Performance Analytics Spotlight plugin on your instances. Next date night feature. This is interactive analysis, and it came with the Jakarta release, and it's something that's useful, and I'm going to demonstrate it for you. It's useful because information tends to be one of the most addictive and contagious things that's out there. And if I go back to my dashboards here, and I want to go to my incident process owner dashboard, I'm just going to bring up this process owner dashboard. And I've got 534 open incidents in real time. And I'm going to, because I really want to know more, you find with the information, you give somebody a little bit, they always want to know more. So I'm going to drill into those 534 incidents right now and get to the scorecard view and get to the records. Now, this is still a lot of data. And historically with the ServiceNow platform, if I wanted to start analyzing this, I always have the ability to right-click on any one of the columns and have a bar or pie chart option available to me. All right, let's come here. Bar or pie chart. But what you may not have seen in the past, and if you're not on the Jakarta release with Performance Analytics turned on, I know you haven't seen this, is this concept of launch interactive analysis. And what launching interactive analysis does for me is it'll take this set of data, this 534 incidents I have now, and immediately turn it into an interactive dashboard for me to start playing with. All right? I'm just going to take this off. I'm going to remove that filter from the screen. So in one click, I've produced an interactive dashboard of those detailed records that I had there for number of open incidents, my 534, and I can start grouping this information differently. Right now I have it grouped by assignment group, or maybe I want to stack it in a more holistic manner by assignment group so I don't get those breakdowns in the bars that are there, or I want to change the aggregation function, or get to the detailed records themselves, or start filtering this information in different ways. Maybe I want to add an interactive filter for priority and only look at the critical incidents in these different groups. So all of this flexibility I have with the information here, that I got that in just one click. I didn't have to build or author this screen, right? I was simply looking at a key performance indicator, right? Had a large number of open incidents. I drilled into it. I got to the detailed records, but I had more questions. I wanted to narrow the information down more completely, or narrow the information down even more to help me get some insights into that information. In one click, I've got this interactive dashboard called interactive analysis to help me get access to that type of information or that level of flexibility with the information that's there. So that's called interactive analysis. I'm just going to close this, go back to the dashboard view itself. Interactive analysis, as I mentioned, available on Jakarta. There's not a great blog focusing just on interactive analysis, but if you wanted to read up a little bit more, there's a blog out there on diversity, inclusion, and belonging. It's all about different ways in which we can start analyzing data and different types of data on the ServiceNow platform. And the interactive analysis, it's a plugin that needs to be turned on. Again, it requires, although it's using operational detailed records, it requires a performance analytics license. Now, the chef special that we had on the menu there, this is the text analytics capability that became available in Kingston. And what this allows me to do is word frequency analysis on any short description field that I have inside of the platform. The idea here is that I've got some unstructured or semi-structured in the data inside of the platform that I want to start taking advantage of. And I can do that now using the word frequency analysis or text analytics widget. So it counts the frequency in which terms are mentioned in any short description string, and I can start trending and tracking these words over time. So I see all of a sudden I got this big word down. So a lot of the short descriptions around my open instance contain the word down, and I can drill into that and see what else are they saying in combination with the word down, and are there any spikes and trends of those influencing words or related words to that one that's down that's there inside of the short descriptions. Right, so it's just a different way to take advantage of other data that you may have historically not used inside of the platform, doing word frequency analysis on top of the semi-structured or unstructured data in the platform that's not in, let's say, a reference or a choice field that we typically use for breaking down information. A very popular use case around, or a popular use case that people are applying the word frequency analysis to, is to, let's say, knowledge searches. Not service catalog, service portal, sorry, service portal usage. So they're looking at the logs around what people are searching on inside of the service portal or inside of knowledge specifically. And then what they do is they start breaking those search terms down by the number of results that are coming back. So what I can do in here is I'm going to isolate just the terms that are most frequently referenced with 0 results coming back inside of the service portal. So I can isolate no results, and I can start seeing the things that people are looking for, but they're not getting any hits back on. And that gives me some direction in terms of some improvements I could be making inside of my knowledge base or inside of my service, the content I have in my service portal. So it's a very powerful use case for the word frequency analysis, is to apply it to search terms to help us get some direction in terms of how to improve the content that we're providing for folks. So that's text analytics. It's available in the Kingston release with performance analytics. And I wanted to make sure, because that's fairly new, but a lot of people are unaware that that capability existed as well. So we focused in on 4 capabilities that I find valuable capabilities that I find many customers overlook. We looked at the Workbench, we looked at Spotlight, we looked at interactive analysis, and then lastly here we just looked at that text analytics capability designed to help us get more value out of the unstructured data inside of the platform. In addition to all that content, I wanted to make you guys aware on the phone that there is some great information about getting started with performance analytics that has recently been posted to the Customer Success Center. So if you go out to the Customer Success Center, you're fairly new to performance analytics, check out this Getting Started guide we put up there. Tremendous amount of information about how to get you going on your journey. And then for those of you that have been using performance analytics for some time, right, and you're down the road, you're fairly mature with performance analytics, I want to celebrate your success. If you have like an amazing performance analytics story, I want to know. I want to know what you're doing with performance analytics, what insights you're finding, the changes that you've made inside of the organization based on the information that you've discovered through performance analytics. I want to know those stories. So please connect with me on the community, LinkedIn, Twitter. Reach out to me. I'd love to collaborate with you and understand what you're doing and the types of things that you want to continue to do with performance analytics. As we mentioned at the very beginning, if you got questions, I hope that you're posting them inside of the community, and we'll do our best to get back to you and answer all those questions posted inside of the community in a timely manner. And perhaps your peers in the community will answer them before myself or any of my peers here at ServiceNow ever get to them. That's the end of this session. I appreciate your time today. And like I said, let's connect and let's continue the conversation via the ServiceNow community site. Thank you very much.